What is up, Texas Longhorn fans? Welcome back to another episode 18 of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Hook 'em horns. Everybody is drinking at least a little Kool-Aid after what happened on Saturday. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some other things that we saw in week 2 on our first live edition post week 2 of Dit Hole this week. We'll have another episode with a special guest tomorrow. Longhorns, huge victory over Alabama, the first team in the Nick Saban era at Alabama to go into Tuscaloosa and to win a game by double digits. We talked about all those numbers and all the trends last week. I have a special guest here with me, my fantastic co-host from the Raw Prospect Podcast main feed, Emmy Nixon, who's joined us before on Dit Hole and will continue to join us pretty frequently on Dit Hole as long as this show continues to roll on. Welcome, Emmy. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great, man. It was a long time coming, waiting for that game to come around. We were talking about it all summer long, and it finally happened. And I mean, we won the dang thing. I mean, nobody thought we could do it except for us, or not us being us two, but Texas fans.
Lee Corso, he believed. If you watch College Game
Shout
Day
out to
on
Lee Corso, legendary.
Legendary. Loved that guy. He believed with his second straight year in this home and home that he picked Texas. He picked them last year in Austin. Obviously, that almost went his way. And he picked them again, along with Desmond Howard, who also picked Texas as well. The only ones not to pick Texas was, I think, Pat McAfee. So, I mean, let's just start here. What does this mean for Texas? Like, in the grand scheme of things, beating Alabama on the road by double digits, something that hasn't been done yet in the Nick Saban era, but also at Alabama, but also the way that they just controlled that game, and then what we saw happen in that second half when Texas struggled in the third quarter. They struggled to capitalize on some opportunities. Alabama actually went, I think, 10 unanswered points, went up. I think it was 16-13 after trailing 13-6 at the half. They get the long touchdown to Jermaine Burton in the left corner of the end zone on that post route. Kind of a blown coverage by Texas. And in the fourth quarter, Texas takes it right back. And that's something that we have not seen Texas do as a program, as a football team the past couple of years. Usually, any other Texas team of the past half decade to decade would have folded after that touchdown, after Bama comes back, scores 10 unanswered, comes back from trailing double digits at one point and takes the lead. It just felt different. The way that they controlled the line of scrimmage, the way that they were able to stop the run when it was clear that Bama wanted to run the football, holding Bama to 3.1 yards per carry. I'll stop right there. Where's your head at? I guess it's now 3 days after the game, 3-4 days after the game. A lot of Texas fans are turning their attention to this Wyoming game on Saturday to see how this Texas team comes out and responds after a big win like that. Now I think the big challenge for Texas is not any one game on their schedule. It's just handling success, proving that they can handle success, and staying focused on a week-to-week basis, not having the slip-ups that they've had in the past. Because there will come a time, I think, in Big 12 play where they have to play a couple closer games. So how do they respond to that? But for right now, let's just enjoy this victory as much as we can as we head into Wyoming. Where's your head at after that? What comes to mind? Where do you want to go with this conversation?
Well, Quinn Ewers, for one, was fantastic. The offense looked great, but I think a lot of credit has to go to the defense. I had originally picked this game. Um, I had picked Alabama to win 38-35, I believe it was. So really, the the defense was what I underestimated a little bit. For one, I think I gave Jalen Milroe a little bit too much credit in terms of his passing ability. I think he wasn't quite there yet. And then two, the Texas defense was ready for the running game that Alabama presented them. It was pretty clear all night. Alabama couldn't do what they wanted to do running the football, and from there, um, Bama's offensive coordinator was drawing great plays clearly, and if you were watching that game on TV, it was pretty clear to see there was people open down the field, and the offensive coordinator was getting pretty frustrated. Um, so it really just came down to Jalen Milroe wasn't really pulling the trigger on those big throws, and I think Texas kind of got under his skin a little bit. Once that first interception happened, I think he just didn't trust his eyes at all.
There were a lot of questions coming into the season about not only that defensive line, which did perform well in fall camp. Like we heard a lot of good things coming out of fall camp about T'Vondre Sweat, about Byron Murphy, about Alfred Collins, about Vernon Broughton. The list goes on and on. We knew kind of what we're going to get based on what we saw last year from a guy like Barron Sorrell. What we did not know is who were going to be the guys who stepped up in place of Ovie Ogofu opposite Barron Sorrell on the edge. And it was worrisome a little bit coming into this Bama game because of the things that Jalen Milroe presents. Not only with, his athleticism and his dynamic ability to make plays off script with his legs and throw the football down the field. But, the one of the bigger concerns for Texas was not only would they be able to generate pressure up the middle and really generate a pass rush enough to affect Jalen Milroe, but would they be able to keep edge contained, keep him within the pocket, make him a pocket passer, make him primarily beat them with his arm. And eventually, I think they did a really good job of that. And if I had to give out, I think there are a couple game balls to go around here, but if I had to give out a game ball for what happened on Saturday night in Tuscaloosa, it has to go to Ethan Burke. The hometown kid, Austin grown, out of Westlake High School. I believe he was a mid-4, high 4-star recruit. Not quite the 5-star level kid, but really good football player coming out of high school from a premier program, not only in the state of Texas, but nationally. At the high school level, we've seen a bunch of really great players, NFL Hall of Famers come out of Westlake High School, in fact. So he's, through 2 games, you can make the argument he's been the most productive player on the Texas defense. I think he has 3 sacks. He had like 1.5 in the Rice game. I think he had another 1 or 2 more in this Alabama game, was in the backfield constantly, handled their freshman left tackle, Caden Proctor, all night, who, that guy was a 5-star, highly recruited, coming out of high school as well, and was making plays in the run game, had a couple sacks, was just causing disruption all night. And if Texas gets that level of production out of him, if he maybe is like the breakout guy, like we saw, with Jalen Ford last year, but at this edge rush position opposite Barron Sorrell, man, it opens up so many things because you saw it on Saturday night. They were able to kind of move Anthony Hill around and just use him as a total disruptor. I'm already kind of seeing shades of, and I hate to make comparisons this early on in a player's young career. Anthony Hill is still a baby. Let's be clear. He's playing in his second ever college football game, and he really hasn't even played a full game yet. If you combine the amount of snaps that he's played in week 1 and week 2, it might amount to a full football game for a defensive starter. He's still a baby in his college football career, but the 5-star linebacker out of Denton, Texas, from Ryan High School, he was all over the place and has been all over the place. In the Rice game, going sideline to sideline, and then also we heard about this in fall camp, being a disruptor from a pass rush standpoint. And he, I think, had a couple sacks as well himself. He had a monster game.
Yeah, and
on
I think another key thing from him was you saw him taking the coaching early on in the game. He had that one play where he got past Jalen Milroe, and Jalen Milroe was able to escape because he didn't keep his rushing lane. And then he got back into the game and corrected his mistake and finished off the sack. So it was just, that says a lot about him as a player to be able to make the correction mid-game. And I mean, I can't even remember how many times like we've seen running quarterbacks play Texas and they just don't know how to stay in their rushing lanes. Either don't know or just don't care enough. I don't know what it was. Here's a little trip down memory lane. Do y'all remember the Taysom Hill game? I mean, the years over years of just letting running quarterbacks just absolutely cook us. And it just finally seems like the coaching is there to where guys are really buying in.
Yeah, and Anthony Hill, as I was trying to make in my original point.
Yeah, my bad.
Great points. I mean, this is a conversation, open conversation. By the way, thank you to the one viewer that we have. If you're a Texas fan, you better be in the chat. Now, I understand if you're maybe not drinking the Kool-Aid like us.
Okay.
But if you're maybe that one Texas fan that I reached out to earlier today to tell that we would be doing this, you better make some kind of comment or do something in the chat, engage in the conversation. There's no reason not to if you are getting drunk on the Kool-Aid, so to speak, as I am.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But Anthony Hill, going back to the original point, I'm not saying he's going to be this player. I'm not saying he's even going to be anything close to this player. But you can kind of see, like, if he develops a little more, kind of fills in the gaps I think that exists still in his game and getting to the next level as sort of that every down linebacker and not just being that disruptor and effective from a pass rush standpoint. The versatility that he provides as an athlete, it reminds me a little bit of one Micah Parsons. I'm not saying that's not a comparison. It's just there are some things in his game this early on in his career that would kind of, I guess, remind you a little bit of what we saw from Micah Parsons at Penn State and what we're seeing from Micah Parsons right now in the NFL. He's so big for Texas. And if we want to talk about recruiting a little bit, when you think about what Texas is going to have and what they're starting to do from a defensive line and edge rush perspective, which I think a lot of Texas fans have been waiting for, getting Colin Simmons, pairing him with Anthony Hill and Ethan Burke and Colton Vasek, who we haven't even seen yet, and maybe even a guy like Christopher Ross, if he emerges, he's had some good moments early on. It's starting to look like a really dangerous defensive line for Texas. If these guys continue to develop in the coaching, I think, as opposed to maybe years past, I think Texas is starting to figure out a little bit. Kwiatkowski in his third year has these guys ready to go. We kind of saw it in PK's last two stops at Washington. They struggled year one. They were better in year two. And then they got to the point where they were close to elite in year three of his tenure at Washington. I think a similar thing might be happening at Texas right now. When you look at the secondary, played really well on Saturday night. Terrence Brooks obviously is a guy that I think is going to end up being in the NFL. Ryan Watts, although some NFL scouts I think view him more as a safety when he gets to the league. He's a lengthy guy, transferred from Ohio State last year, and really played really good. An A game from a cornerback's perspective on Saturday night. Jahdae Barron gets the interception. Jaron Thompson, who missed part of the Rice game due to a suspension, he had a key interception in that fourth quarter. We saw more from the Arkansas transfer, Jalen Catalon. Like, this is a defense that now, as opposed to years past, has playmakers at all three levels. And they might have multiple playmakers at all three levels. Like, we've seen Barron Sorrell do it. We've seen Ethan Burke do it. We saw what Tavondre Sweat did last week at Rice. We've seen him make plays. We've seen Byron Murphy make plays. We've seen Jalen Ford be an All-American already. He's heading that way again, I think. And then when you look at this secondary, it's deep. So this defense, man, boy, oh boy. I think this is one of the reasons you can get excited if you are Texas moving forward this season. I think it's a little different this year. They haven't had this on the line of scrimmage from a defensive perspective. Like, when have they had this in the past 10 years? So I don't know, man. Run game defense was fantastic. They manhandled Bama up front, and that's something that I think was probably the most surprising thing outside of how good Quinn Ewers played on Saturday night. So, you have anything else to add from a defensive perspective before we flip to the offense?
Well, I can't think of his name at the moment, but I'm sure you can help me out here. The kid that transferred from Arkansas
Jalen
looked
Catalon?
really good.
Jalen
Yep,
Catalon?
Jalen Catalon. I think he had an injury at Arkansas or
Yep.
something like that, but he looks healthy. He looks good, man. He's I just like his style coming downhill. It seems like no matter how deep he is, he's always in the mix on those running plays, getting into the thick of things, like throwing his body around. I just like how aggressive he plays.
The last time we saw that guy fully healthy for a full season, he was, I think, first team All SEC as a freshman at Arkansas.
Yep.
That doesn't happen for every freshman.
No.
And that's the guy that when Texas went out and got him in the transfer portal, that's what they were hoping for. The concern with him is health. He's had some shoulder issues. He's had some other issues that have come up the past couple of years. Ultimately transfers to Texas, saw his opportunity. And I mean, Jaron Thompson, probably the most experienced and tenured player on this defense, along with Jalen Catalon, as a safety tandem with Derek Williams, the 5-star safety out of Louisiana, the number 2 ranked overall prospect in the state of Louisiana from last year's recruiting class behind Arch Manning. Boy, oh boy. It's deep. And then you have Malik Muhammad, who's a 5-star or borderline 5-star by some recruiting services. He's shown flashes in the snaps he's gotten. This is a deep Texas defense. They have depth now, and they're looking pretty damn good. You have to give credit to PK. I think one of the concerns coming into this year for some Texas fans was, okay, well, yes, they did make improvements last year, right? Market improvements, but how much of that could be, I guess, attributed to PK and the adjustments that he made? Some of it, of course, was, the upgrades in personnel. I mean, going out and getting a Ryan Watts, having the breakout from a Jalen Ford. I mean, some of that has to do with the play on the field and the players that stepped up, right? But if you think back to last year, how much of it could have been attributed to PK, who's a proven defensive coordinator who really struggled in year one, which is why Texas fans were kind of shaky on him, and how much of it was actually Gary Patterson and his presence as an analyst, who's actually no longer with Texas. Had that 1 year stint last year. Now he's not there anymore. Texas fans wanted to see it from PK. And I think you're just seeing the natural progression of a defensive coordinator, that a guy who, once he gets his personnel the way that he wants it, puts out really good defenses year in and year out. And so it's kind of uncharted territory for Texas to be a top 10 run defense, because that's what they are right now. I know it's only 2 weeks, but it still is uncharted territory to be where they are right now defensively.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's switch to the offense. We raved about the defense now for 22 minutes. Offensively, it all starts with Quinn Ewers in the play of that offensive line. You go first. Give your thoughts on Ewers and or the offensive line. What did you see? We had some concerns about both coming in after what we saw in the Rice game, but what did you see offensively?
I think maybe I overreacted a little bit after that Rice game, because in hindsight, that Rice team ended up beating U of H the next week, and that's a good U of H program. So clearly, that Rice team had a little bit more talent than maybe we thought. So maybe they really didn't play that bad against Rice. I mean, it's all about perspective, I guess. Really, it's just the mentality. I think it's just a mentality thing, really. In years past, it just felt like when it was running the football, it was a bit of a slog. If we're being entirely honest, outside of those couple of years with Bijan and Roshan Johnson, it was really just tough sledding running the football. But now, I mean, you throw any back out there, I feel comfortable that they're going to go out there and be productive. So, being that confident in a running game, that's a big asset to have next to Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, for me, I think number one, we have to applaud the offensive line for what they were able to do. Yeah. Not many offensive lines, even if they are top notch in college football, go into Tuscaloosa and not only give up 2 pressures the entire game, but give up 0 sacks. And that's what Texas did.
And limited penalties too.
Yeah,
not a lot of penalties.
Limited penalties as well. They were disciplined. Quinn Ewers left that game with as wide of a jersey as he came into that game with. And that's the best sign, I think, for Texas that you could have hoped for coming in to Tuscaloosa after what we saw in week 1. Now, maybe week 1 against Rice was, as you mentioned, just maybe not giving enough credit to what Rice is as a team. But also, I think looking back, you can say with a fair amount of confidence that Sark was pretty vanilla, I think, offensively with the concepts that they ran against Rice, with what they were running. And look, Quinn Ewers, right? If that offensive line performance doesn't happen, we obviously don't see the performance that we saw from Quinn Ewers. So want to point out the offensive line first, but Quinn Ewers was, to me, the best player on the field. On Saturday night, he looked like, and I said this on one of our episodes earlier this week when we did Prospect of the Week, he looked like the guy that was recruited out of high school. Everything came together nicely. It was a complete performance. He was in control. He did not panic. He was not erratic. He, for the most part, aside from maybe one throw that I can remember, did not put the ball in harm's way. Was smart with the football. He was pinpoint on passes 25 or more yards down the field. That's a big reason Texas won this game. His pocket presence, I thought, was incredible. He was calm. He was collected. made some big throws in some key third down situations. Um, hit his receivers, capitalize on most of their opportunities, and Texas gets that level of quarterback play. As I said last night, with this defense, the way that they're playing, and these weapons, it's hard to see them losing a game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think from here on out, they're going to be favored in just about every single game up until maybe the Big 12 title. And for good reason, man. With Quinn, I think that first touchdown to Xavier Worthy, that catch was just ridiculous. I mean, Quinn put a lot of air under it, and I think he may not have gotten that throw as wide towards the sideline as he wanted. He kind of threw it down the hash, and Xavier had to kind of turn and get upfield. But man, that catch was insane. I mean, Xavier Worthy's hands may not be like a quote unquote strength, I guess, but um, he's capable of making any catch. That there's no question about that. I think it's just focus issues at this point. And then beyond that, I think on third downs there was just the poise that was there was just really important to me. That was the big thing. There was one throw on third down where he kind of didn't set his feet and kind of misfired, but as soon as he got to the sideline, Sark was like, "Hey, set your feet, calm down a little bit." And then from that point on, he didn't miss at all.
Right. There was a throw at the sideline, I think at the start of the fourth quarter, to A.D. Mitchell, backed up in their
Yep.
own end zone, which was, I mean, he put it about the only place you could have put it for it either not to be intercepted or knocked away. That was incredible. The throw to JT Sanders on that drive, the very next play, where Sanders, I mean, you saw the athlete that he is and his run after catch ability, which I think makes him unique as a tight end and a guy who, isn't the best blocker in the world, is more built for that kind of style play. You can put him at receiver, you can put him in motion, which Texas did a lot on Saturday, and you can run him on just about any route, and he can get open, and he can use his size to his advantage in the red zone. And has good run after catch athletic ability. He was awesome on Saturday night. Aside from putting the ball on the ground a couple times, I kind of hold my breath now when he gets the ball in his hands. He seems to forget sometimes to tuck the ball away high and tight as he's running because he's just such a great athlete. But I think the Texas coaches will get that cleaned up. When they watch the film, Sark will clean that up, and he's an absolute weapon. Because now, if you're Texas, you have two guys, really anybody can hurt you over the middle of the field, right? But now you have to allot a guy at least to A.D. Mitchell. Now you definitely have to allot one or two to Xavier Worthy, because what Xavier Worthy does best is he gets open. He may not catch the ball every time. He catches it most of the time, but he gets open basically better than anyone outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. in college football. He's an excellent route runner, absolute technician. And once he gets the ball in his hands, he's dynamite, right? And then you have an A.D. Mitchell who uses his size, more of his size and strength to go up and get the ball and is more of a target in the red zone. And through 2 games of his Texas career, already has 3 touchdown catches, and 2 of them were huge on Saturday night. The one where Quinn waited a little bit on that slant route, on that read option in the red zone when Texas took the lead back after they went down 16-13, or what was it? 16-13. That first drive of the fourth quarter, where he pulled the ball, kind of waited a little bit for the window to clear and kind of changed his arm angle a little bit through a dart. I kind of mixed dart and dot. I don't know what you heard,
Yeah.
Threw a dot to A.D. Mitchell on that slant route, and then later in the game, the play that basically sealed it for Texas, the post route, right, just letting the ball go, absolute perfect throw by Quinn Ewers, and you saw what A.D. Mitchell presents. He makes catches in big games. He's a big time, big play type of player. You have Jordan Whittington, who is experienced, a leader on this football team, does what he does, right? He'll get open. He'll do a little bit of the dirty work. He can make some things happen after he catches the ball, break some tackles. Really good football player all around. And then you have the athleticism of a JT Sanders. And then a Jonte Cook, who you saw in the game, that didn't really throw him the ball, but he was used as he's just another guy on the field that was used on some of those touchdown plays as a guy to kind of draw attention, right?
Yeah. Keep the defense's eyes.
Yeah. Keep the defense's eyes elsewhere, which opened up the play to Xavier Worthy, which opened up the play to A.D. Mitchell. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, and that's that. I didn't even mention what Jonathan Brooks showed on Saturday night, and the fact that C.J. Baxter is a freshman. He's, like I mentioned with Anthony Hill, he's still a baby in his college career. And then, Keelan Robinson, some of the things he can do. I mean, this Texas team, man, I don't know what to say. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
So
Kool-Aid has indeed been drunken, man. I don't know what really there else is to say either. When you look at the grand scheme of things in college football, I think there's still I would still probably say there's 12 or 13 teams that still have a shot at this thing.
oh yeah,
In terms of getting into the playoff. It's so early on, so I'm trying not to get too ahead of myself. I think this year the expectation was to win the Big 12. I think the expectation is still that. But now that you've gotten by the Bama game, the hope is that maybe you get into the Big 12 championship and with one loss or less and have an argument for the playoff.
right. Yeah, I mean, what it does is it allows Texas fans to dream big. Getting
Yeah.
past the Bama game gives you a little bit more room for a slip up in Big 12 play. That's what it does. And it allows you, I mean, there aren't going to be many teams in college football this year, maybe a select few that have an argument for a better win than at Alabama by double digits. I mean, there's just not going to be. It doesn't exist out there. So
Maybe Penn State, but that's the only one.
yeah. So look, I mean, there are big things on the horizon for this Texas football team. It looks like it's headed in a different direction this year. I think the biggest challenge moving forward is for this Texas staff, especially, is to do what they've been doing. Dating back to the end of last year, coming into this year, it just seems like this Texas team has a different attitude. They're locked in on one game at a time. It's going to be not any one opponent, as I said at the beginning, but it's going to be the challenge of dealing with success, right? Almost the most amount of success you can have, right? In a singular game in college football, winning at Alabama, in a game that not many people outside of Texas fans thought you could actually win. Now that you've made that statement, people's expectations get a little higher, right? Whether it's, I don't even know what I wanted to say there, but whether it's right or not, the expectations are higher now. You're expected to win 10, 11, maybe even 12 games. Expected to win most. You're going to be favored. I can tell you this right now. They're going to be favored basically every game on their schedule up until the college football playoff if they get there. They're just that talented. Like there's no other Big 12 team that you would favor on a neutral field even over Texas right now. The challenge is just how do they deal with prosperity, and do we still see the old Texas, what we think is now the old Texas, where they, human nature at some point this season is going to take over, right? They're going to have a game where it's closer than it probably should be. It's going to be a fourth quarter game. And they might even be on the ropes at some point, right? I mean, there are a couple games on this UT schedule still that are a little bit concerning, right? But it's just going to come down to, I guess, what do they do? Do they show the second half and fourth quarter team that they've been the first 2 weeks of the season? And if they can do that, and come into each game focused with the mentality to, okay, we're going to kick your ass up front and we're just going to out-talent you guys everywhere else. Like you're not going to be able to match up with us, like the elite programs do on a week-in, week-out basis. Yeah, I mean, there's reason to dream big. So parting shots, anything else? Oh, before we do that, I wanted to get to a little bit of Miami and Texas A&M.
Oh yeah.
This will be fun. Your thoughts on Miami, Texas A&M from Saturday afternoon?
Well,
Did you watch
I think
much of that game?
yeah. I caught most of that game. Yeah. I mean, we knew it would be a shootout, or at least most people thought it would be. I think near the end of that game, Texas A&M just couldn't tackle anybody. On that big touchdown throw down the right sideline, I don't remember who it was to, but I think 4 or 5 Texas A&M defenders had a shot at making that tackle, and they just didn't. I it might just be a one-off type of thing, but it doesn't feel like Texas A&M has any more excuses here. Like Jimbo Fisher has been here 6 years now, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what to say in terms of why they're still making these same mistakes when it comes to winning big games.
Yeah, it blows my mind, especially how bad they were defensively tackling. Like Josh Pate talks about this a lot on the Late Kick podcast. If you're a bad tackling team coming into the season, there's not much hope. I mean, it can get a little better, but it's not like you're going to go from being a bad tackling team in week 2 to a good to great tackling team in say week 6 or 7. Like that's not something you can totally fix and clean up overnight. It's just not. If you're bad in tackling at the start of the season, you're not going to be great at tackling at basically any other point in the season. Like you just can't. That's something that has to be corrected in the off season. There's just not enough time with game prep and everything else that goes on throughout the week. There's a limited amount of time that these teams get to practice and prepare each and every week, and there's not enough time to get the amount of repetition that you need to fix the fundamental things that as a college football player, you with weeks and weeks of spring ball and fall camp, this should not be an issue with the talent that Texas A&M has on their defense. If you look at the 24/7 composite, Texas A&M by super blue chip ratio is the 4th most talented team based on the percentage of high 4 and 5 star prospects or players on their roster behind Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. It's Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas A&M, and that's it. And now Texas is creeping up. They're in the 5th position. And I suspect that at this rate, they'll probably at some point pass Texas A&M with the
Yeah.
levels of performance that the directions the teams seem to be going in. But there's no excuses for that. Like the way that Texas A&M has recruited, especially on the defensive side of the ball, it's just like, how does that happen? That falls on the coaching staff. That falls on the players. And these things shouldn't be happening in year 6 or year 5 or 6 of your coaching tenure at Texas A&M. And then offensively, I thought they played relatively well. I mean, Connor
Yeah.
Wigman throws his first 2 interceptions in his college career. I mean, he wasn't going to be perfect forever. It's the maturation of a young quarterback. He's talented. We saw good things from Amari Daniels and Ruben Owens, their running back tandem. I thought they ran the ball pretty well, like the things that they do with, um, you know, Evan Stort, who's an elite guy at the wide receiver position, and Nia Smith. I mentioned this in maybe one of last week's episodes that we did in Buy or Sell when we talked about Texas A&M. That receiver core doesn't get enough credit for how good it is because A&M hasn't had the quarterback and or the system to make them look good. And I think they have that now in Connor Wigman. The hope for Texas A&M is this offense is still better than what it was last year, and they're going to be able to score enough points in some of these games to, help out their defense a little bit. I don't think
Yeah.
the defense is as bad as it showed on Saturday. That was just, I don't know what happened there. They're still going to have issues. If they're a bad tackling team, they're not going to be a great tackling team moving forward. But I do believe that with their roster, there's no excuse not to win 9 games at the very minimum. Uh, Enough of this 8-game stuff. Like that's not going to cut it anymore. The thing is though, I don't know what you do with Jimbo's contract. Like if you were to fire him now, you'd have to pay him 77 some million dollars would be the buyout, and then next year it would be 68 million, and the year after that it'd be like 50 some million. It's going to take till 2030. They could wait until 2030 and they still have to pay him 12 million bucks to fire him. Now that's nothing for A&M, but they've tied themselves up in this contract for Jimbo Fisher, and now that things aren't really working out the way they thought they were, and they're this deep into it, and they still really have no easy way out. I don't know what you do. I really don't.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I kind of wish Texas played Texas A&M this year just so we could stick it to them a little bit. Like, hey, like get it together, little bro. Like, damn.
Well, I can't wait for that next year. Boy, oh boy. Oh my God. All right. Well, any parting shots? Anything else you wanted to mention from week 2 of college football, or anything you're looking forward to in week 3 or 4?
The only thing is that I think um I want to see consistency, man. That's really it. From Texas, I want to see Quinn Ewers continue to complete those throws down the field and just play how they're capable of playing. They've already shown it. So
Yeah.
handling success. That's the new thing we got to deal with now, which is a good problem to have. Well, I'll take it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's gonna do it as it's kind of late, 10:45. Thank you for joining me on this episode
Yeah.
of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Let's make sure we don't have any chats. Uh, Man, that's disappointing. How do we not have anybody just put something in the chat?
Just drop a
It's kind of
OU sucks or like
yeah.
just a Connor Wayman throws more picks than I can't even think of a joke there. You get the point.
Apple turnovers. Yeah, I mean, make sure you like and subscribe. We're doing another one of these tomorrow. It'll be an earlier start time with our guests, as we mentioned. So looking forward to that, and looking forward to not only week 3, but a loaded week 4 of college football. But until then, still, Texas fans, bask in the glory of this Alabama victory. I mean, this is one of the biggest victories that Texas has had. Biggest road victory in a long, long time, but one of the biggest victories, period, Texas has had as a program in a long time. Like, we've been waiting for this for who knows how long. So celebrate the Bama win, but take it one game at a time, and you have reason to be excited, like legitimately excited about this Texas football team, as they're now ranked 4th in the AP poll. So just like Alabama's chances of blocking Texas on Saturday night in Tuscaloosa, and just like their chances of winning that game after the third quarter when they took the lead, when it evaporated like that, when Quinn Ewers took them on a 3-play, 75-yard drive. We'll see you tomorrow, but that's going to do it for Dit Hole episode 18. Hook 'em horns, and peace out.
Nope.